his old growth trees. We realized this lumber is just getting demolished and thrown in the landfill, which is just absolute craziness. And so I realized let's take this opportunity. Vancouver was coming out with green demolition bylaws in 2014 to start to mandate it. And we started deconstructing through my contracting company. And over a few years, it transitioned into UnBuilders becoming its own company. And we launched in 2018 and have been growing for 4 years. And so the contract, I no longer build, I only UnBuild now, and have launched Heritage Lumber. So my contracting company became Heritage Lumber, which is our reclaimed wood brokerage and product manufacturer. And just closing the Dragon's Den investment and our investor round in the spring. We've got a new facility here in Vancouver and are just really getting going.
Well, I love it. And listen, Adam, for everybody just joining us, we are live. I know there was some hiccups going through, but it looks like all the channels are up and live. So you haven't missed much other than Adam's amazing intro. And but that's right. We're going to cover all this stuff as we go through. We are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Sorry if you had any issues getting in and joining us today. Adam. So let me get this straight now, and I know a little bit about your business because I have somebody in my family that's in a similar business as what you're doing, and it's not easy, man. It's not easy being in the, reclamation business of older buildings, historical buildings, newer buildings, and then what do you do with all this stuff, right? Your warehouse grows fast, so I'm really excited to look into this deeper with you and really get into the bones of the structures with you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we have two different yards. We got an acre in Richmond and an acre in Vancouver, and we're stacked full of wood. So that's where we're really starting to get moving here and get that product back into the building world.
Awesome. Mark, are you with us there, buddy?
I am. Dave, I'm paused for a minute. I hear everything Adam's saying. I'm just sending this to all the people that signed up so that they're popping in. So just give me a minute, folks.
Yeah, for sure. So how long ago did you start your business, did you say, Adam?
January 2018. So we're approaching the 4-year mark.
Right. And we always ask, this started somewhere. What gave you the passion to do it this way versus just bulldozing things and building new?
It's really the sustainability roots I had. Starting in my teenage years, and then I've got a deep love for nature. I love hiking and skiing, and everything outdoors. So being and living in Vancouver here, we've got beautiful forests. It's just incredibly natural all around us. So you see it. I live in it every day. I live next door to a park that's got the big old tree stumps from these trees that were cut down that we recover now. So every day I'm reminded of how important it is to do what we do. Yep. And so it's really, I knew I loved construction. I always wanted to be in construction, and whatever I was going to do, that had to be sustainably focused. And I would say that to kind of kick this off, the thing that really has wired me is something that my parents ingrained in my brothers and I from a young age. It's a quote that our family goes by, and it's some people see things as they are and ask why. I dream of things that never were and ask why not. And so my brothers and I were raised to find out what we love, find that pathway, and figure out how to make it better. And if you look at anything in society, it's always evolving, whether it's a screw or a phone or a car, or figuring out how to take a building down to build a new one that's more densified and more efficient.
Yeah. And so walk us through the process. There's a couple of different business models that you have here, right? So UnBuild, it's just one of the business. Walk us through the section, and then I want to break down each one of those sections, because just taking it apart is one thing. So
so we have two separate brands for a reason. We really want them to be focused in one lane. So UnBuilders is a deconstruction company. We dismantle buildings with the goal to salvage as much as possible. What we can't salvage, we recycle. What we can't recycle, we landfill. So we are minimizing the waste as much as possible within the constraints of time and cost. Obviously, we can't be there for a year on a house and get 99.9% recycling and salvage, but we do hit around 90 to 95% on our projects. And so there's so UnBuilders is doing residential, commercial. We're doing renovations. We'll do anything from a carport or a bathroom tear out all the way up to a 5-story commercial building. And we've really expanded our service in that way. And also doing things, we don't always do a full deconstruction. So sometimes we do a selective deconstruction if the building's newer or time constraints or something don't make it conducive to a full deconstruction. Then we do sort of a partial hybrid model as well. And then from there, we've got the materials that are recovered, and those go in 2 different directions. The first is it goes to our charitable partners. Okay. So we have partnerships with the Reuse People of Canada. There's also the Reuse People of America and Habitat for Humanity. So here in Canada, there's no reuse store. So the goods all end up at Habitat for Humanity here, which not only is great because we're donating to charity, the homeowner gets a tax receipt, which helps offset the extra cost of deconstruction. And then Habitat turns that materials, they sell it, and they use the proceeds to build affordable housing. So in hiring UnBuilders, you're actually also contributing to the construction of affordable housing. And then the wood goes to our other brand, Heritage Lumber, where we process it. To date, we've been selling it raw, and we just got our bandsaw yesterday, big beast of a bandsaw, and we're just getting our production set up so that come the new year, we'll be producing our own product lines and also be able to do custom cutting. So there's only so much reclaimed wood raw that you can sell before the market's flooded. We know that we got to be making high performance products, which is why I started the business in the first place. I shifted from passive house builder to this because I wanted to become a supplier for those sustainable builds.
I'm going to invite you to come back every week. This is like, I knew it was going to be great from all our conversations, and literally a lot of us stalk what you do, right? There's people that you grab that from, and there's a whole lot of old growth inside of you, Adam. And I'm glad you're sharing it out there. I'm enthused beyond belief. This is fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I breathe it and it's in my hands every day. So I think I'm about 3% old growth lumber at this point.
And climbing. I could picture a sign over the new cutting area that says something like "the band is back together," right? That just to have that bandsaw. The videos you're going to produce, like, there's nothing better than a bandsaw, right? It's a dream of what it does, and it's about the only thing that could tackle that timber, right? Because you got beasts, right? And then there's got to be a wand in front of it first to ensure there's not a random piece of barbed wire or a nail from a for sale sign and 18 blah blah blah, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's not just the we do have a lot of big timber, especially because we're in commercial now, but for me, it was always, how do we make the market for a 2x4? Because I want us to deconstruct everything. And so that's always been, which is the hardest thing to figure out and the hardest thing to denail. So that's sort of been my goal is, there's big timbers, there's demo companies that salvage big timber. That's old news. How do we salvage even the smallest stuff? And then, and we're still years away from figuring out how to really make the 2x4 profitable. But that's sort of my guiding light is get all the way down to the smallest stuff.
So in terms of 2x4s, because they're not small, what is the largest 2x4 you've harvested, both dimensionally, right? Because that dimension was a little erratic and wonderful, but also what's the longest you've seen in length? Like, I know in Chicago, we've done the balloon framing, right? So I've seen some long ones, but I mean, BC is the Mecca. So,
well, I mean, anything pre-1920 is 2 inches by 4 inches minimum. But I mean, we see 2.5 by 4.5. Basically, it gets as big until it's almost a 3x6. It's almost like they were just milling it with their eyes closed. And And yeah, length. We actually. I'm surprised that we have not yet run into a balloon frame. I thought that Vancouver was also really prevalent with them, but it's not here. So we probably see like 24-foot 2x4s. The most amazing thing is not necessarily the length of them, but the fact that 2x4 in some of these old houses was used as floor joists, and they're on 16-inch centers, and they're spanning like 12 to 14 feet, a 2x4. And you're looking at that going, how the hell is this house still standing 100 years later? It's just so strong.
Well, they had better nails, they had better wood, they were driven by beasts, right? And then they were often laid with the 1x, and those 1x also were often 1x12s, 1x14s, and
Yep.
true 1x, right? So that interlocking together, I mean, Mother Nature comes with her big old stormy storm, and the wood's like, right? It's got enough flex to it. It's the joy of wood. It's like, nah, you can't do that to me, right?
Well, hey, Mark, you got to explain a little bit more on, like, we say it's better wood. And what makes the wood better is it's older. It grew slower. It's not the fast grown pine and the wood that we're using today. So with that said, I mean, I believe that's why you get those longer spans without wondering why it is broken down, because it's a more dense wood than what we use today. No, correct? Yes, wrong?
Dave, it's loud and clear. This is not what you want to see. Adam, can you show a visual of what we're getting today? And then we'll all comment on that. And then when you're ready, bring out the beast.
Yeah, so we're obviously through time in Vancouver area here. We got we were framing with old growth lumber right into the 70s, and it's tighter grain. It came from those monster trees, some of them up to 2,000 years old in this region, and it's just straight up better wood. And so what we've been framing with since then is it was fir, and then in the 90s it kind of switched over to pine. So we mostly see pine, and so that's your typical kind of cross cut of SPF. Let me see here. I'm not covering my face. Your typical SPF, and you can see the really loose grain versus is a bit bigger, but this is an old growth. Let me get this here. 2x6, and you can see the growth rings.
So Adam, just keep that up there. I'm going to count them all.
yeah.
Good luck.
Start from the left, Mark.
It gets so, where am I here? It gets so tight through here. I think it's about 200 years of growth here in like 4 inches. It's just insane. And so that's the big difference here. I'll do the comparison.
Yeah, there you go. That's a huge difference. Okay. That's amazing right there. That says it all.
Absolutely.
That last one says it all.
Yeah. I knew the question was coming, Dave, and Adam, that is a show and tell moment. And what people can realize, if you actually scratch your screen right now, you can smell the pine. Because we stream this with the scratch and sniff mode.
Yeah, so, you didn't know that, Adam? That's something that Mark and I have recently coined and invented. Is we have scratch and sniff video, and it's not always pleasant, especially when Mark works 24 hours in the factory in one day.
Hey, I got my shoes on today. So, Adam, that visual was stunning, and Dave, we've had charts on the show, we've had books on the show, all this incredible stuff, but nothing tells the story like the rings of a tree, right? To have that on there, the proposition that it gives us is incredible. Brian Cooper, Dave, you better take this one. Hello to you, Brian.
Yeah, so this is my brother, by the way. He owns a similar business in Pittsburgh. This is why it's so good. He never joins my show. I think this is the first time he's ever commented. I don't like him much, but he's here anyhow. No, I'm just kidding. 100%, gentlemen, there's no comparison between true slow growth timber and newer chemical driven timber. So Brian has salvaged Pittsburgh. You guys should probably talk. I'd be willing to bet there's a lot to learn, because he has 25,000 square foot space as well. I mean, he's had to grow and grow. And he plays in the world that you're playing in. So very cool. Thanks for tuning in there, little Coop. He's actually a lot bigger than me, even though I'm older than him.
Yeah, well, Pittsburgh's I think becoming a hotspot for deconstruction too. I know that we're watching what the city's doing there, and they're looking to push some policy, I believe. So
yeah, for sure. All right, so let me get this. Just I got to start from the beginning. Here we are. You got a company called UnBuild It. You know,
it's UnBuilders, Dave. You're thinking about next week with Jake.
Oh, UnBuilders. Okay, my apologies. So UnBuilders. So you have UnBuilders, and then we're looking at. I got a barn. I got a 1960s house, and you know, are you going to take care of both of those for me?
Yep. Yeah, definitely. They're approached a little bit differently, but yeah, we do it all.
And so the barn I get, right? The wood you're getting, the old oaks, the old cherries, you know, there's probably some walnut and things that don't even grow anymore, I'm sure you find, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you're on the east side, right? You're in the eastern US?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You know, here on the west, all the way down the west coast, you're mostly just dealing with fir, Sitka spruce, and redwoods or cedars.
Yep.
And but once you go to the Midwest and then further to the east, then you get more of the hardwoods. So we're primarily only recovering fir and cedar here in Vancouver, but certainly the other companies like mine in other parts of the country and on the east side are getting better, like more of the hardwoods, which we don't get a lot of here.
Sure. So the barn wood and the old stuff, you know, we get, right? The purpose. I mean, people love it. It's old. It's cool. Talk to me about the houses you guys are unbuilding, right? That 1960s house where you can process, you know, I think you said what, 95% of the material you can recycle somehow.
Yeah, we salvage and recycle 90 to 95%. So it's well, even the 2x4s are old growth, pre 1970, and so that's where,
right,
you know, it's really important for us to even get down to the 2x4s and get those back in the supply chain. And for me, so in Canada, I'll just hit you with a little bit of stats. In Canada, the landfills here, 40% of all the material going to the landfill comes from construction and demolition. 40%. It's the biggest contributor to our landfills, period. So we're, you know, COP26 is kicked off here in Scotland, and we've got world leaders meeting, and Canada, the government here is trying to make moves towards becoming more sustainable. And for us, there's one really easy solution, and it is, hey, why don't we stop demolishing and start deconstructing everything? Demolition contractors can retool, retrain, and shift, and some of them have. And we can make a massive dent in our carbon footprint if we stop demolishing buildings, because you're bringing all that material to a landfill where it decomposes into methane, and that's 23 times more harmful for greenhouse gases than even CO2. So it's really bad, and that's the way I'm looking at it. Is we want to make a big impact with UnBuilders and myself with my career, and so I see this as an amazing opportunity to really take a dent out of our carbon footprint.
Well, it's not just an amazing opportunity, but that's the whole business side, right? That just comes with running our passions, but it's the necessary step. We can't build ourselves out of problems, right? The embodied carbon is what do we call it, Dave? A carbon disaster, in fact. So
big disaster.
The fact of first saying, hey, step one is let's try and save existing buildings. Step two is not green demolition, not demolition, period, is absolutely deconstruction and following the process, you know, pretty much refined to design by UnBuilders. It's incredible. The amount of carbon conversations that are around in all the groups that we're in, Adam, is they're all saying the same thing. One, what I just stated, we can't build our way out of it. And then I overlay that with a statement that Dave laughs at all the time is there is no way, right? Like you're saying, what is it, 40 to 60% or is construction?
40% construction demolition debris, 40%.
So
40.
And shoot, like we all love the material. We all think it's sexy. It's in the most elite studios and showrooms, right? And it's in Anytown, USA, and that is a local proposition, a local job creation.
Yeah.
And this example that you set is how other people learn, is following what other people do, because no one talked about this before, right?
No. And it boggles my mind that even with all the traction and awareness, especially in Vancouver here, that's building for deconstruction and material reuse, just the sheer volume of demolition happening every day, it still kind of rattles me. And I know we had a school and a house like on my block demolished this past summer, and my wife said, "Does it bug you?" I said, "Yeah, of course it bugs me. I'm driving by this every day and looking at this pile of old growth wood chips and thinking, what's wrong with people? Why can't we make this shift happen quicker?" I'm realistic. I understand that money is what drives the decisions, but at a certain point, we got to think about other things as well.
That's right. That's right. Why don't we take this moment and say hello to a few people? There's a couple comments as well that we should go through. I was flashing a couple of them up. Shannon says, "Thanks, Adam, for pulling it apart so we can put it back together." I love it. That's a t-shirt right there.
That's a t-shirt. Way to go, Shannon. Happy Friday with a PH to you, gal.
Yeah, happy Friday on that one. Definitely, definitely. So we got a lot of people from Pittsburgh tuning in. Brian Keish, thank you, Brian, for tuning in today. We appreciate having you join us. If this is your first time, awesome, man. Let us know who you are and what you do. I don't recall seeing your name up there before, but if you have been here, my apologies. But you'd be surprised who will reach out to you from this show. So awesome having you. All right, you know that Tim Sims sitting in his treehouse out there, and he really does sit in the treehouse and work. It's not a joke. The man owns a treehouse.
Adam, he's in Washington State, so if you're ever by there, you can visit Tim in his Airstream or his treehouse. It's
that's awesome.
Yeah,
it is cool.
I love both.
Right?
Hey, the good doctor's here, Mark. The good doctor is in
back.
the house.
We need to teach her how to spell finally. That is with a PH. We don't allow F's on this show.
Yeah, that's when you're on the inside crew. So what Mark just did, he just invited you into the inner fold of the PH family, Dr. Reynolds. So thanks for tuning in.
Inner fold with a PH, Dave. Always doing it. Always doing it.
There is nothing better than surrounding yourself with people smarter than us, Mark. So she has a DR in front of her name. So fabulous. All right, Stephen Boomel, I think Boomel, maybe. Fantastic work, Adam. Stephen, I hope I didn't mess your name up too bad there. Of course, Brian was on, my brother. He says he loves it. And of course, I'm sure he does because he's in the same realm as you. Now we got Peter Molinar in the house. Go ahead, Mark. Why don't you read this one?
Yeah, Peter, welcome. I think Peter's in Ontario. It's all physics and applied mechanics calculations. Full-size 2x4s are substantially more capable of supporting more mass over a given span. Perfectly said, Peter. And besides your mechanical background, I know you're also really good in the roofing world. I will give you one better, Peter. When Adam mentioned the fir, the biggest fir that I've ever loaded on the trucks was a 3x14, and I believe it was 44 feet. Beautiful specimen. So the 2x4s, yes, Peter. The 3x14s.
We got another one from Peter here, Mark. So why don't you just carry on with this one?
Great. So Peter says, how does the labor cost to deconstruct buildings compare to the revenue available from the sale of salvage lumber? Wow, he's going right into the books, looking for the black and the red and the margins. Give us the goods, Adam.
Well, it's when I started UnBuilders, actually before we deconstructed it, I thought, maybe the sale of the goods would sort of offset the cost of the labor, but unfortunately that's not the case. So deconstruction does cost more upfront than demolition. And, if you took the sale of those goods over a few years, you'd probably come out with a wash. But the thing is, you got to hold on to them for a few years, store them, sometimes process them. So there is a lot of value that we're recovering. And that's where with the donation model, we get an appraisal. We see what basically the retail value of that material is. But we couldn't ever pay the homeowner that retail value to get it. So we have two models. We either do a donation model where we receive goods and donate them, or we actually acquire them like a commercial building. We'll go in, say, okay, there's 100,000 board feet. We'll give you X amount per board foot, knowing that we're going to sell it for, three or four times that, because of then all the holding costs, transportation, et cetera, that we have to factor in. So there is a lot of value, but it's the cost associated from deconstruction to final end market. There's a lot of cost involved there too. So it still comes out the deconstruction is more, and that's where for us, we do a lot of work with policymakers. And we're trying to figure out ways to incentivize owners, because we know people aren't just going to do this out of the goodness of their hearts. Just like building passive house, although, some people are now really shifting to passive house quickly, but there's all the other benefits of why you do it. It's harder to have that benefit when it's not adding something to a building, like adding thermal comfort or efficiency. We're taking away an old building. So it's an even harder sales pitch, basically, to say, do the good thing and pay more money just because it's the right thing. So we have some financial incentive through donation or acquisition, but we're really trying to push hard to see some incentives come from the government if they really want to see this happen.
It's really so many points to touch on there. So if you just take the world of demolition and it gets knocked, it gets trucked, and it gets dumped, there's no bill and there's no alerting to the world of that deferred cost of what we're doing with that mound, right? That's just sitting there, and sometimes on a barge going other places. Like there's dump sites that aren't really on Google Earth. So that is happening. And now you take your other aspect of what you have is there's a skill set to deconstruct, and then there's a packaging, a loading of it, there's a delivery of it, there's an unloading of it, and then there's a sorting, there's a cleaning up of, and there's a stocking. There's a significant amount of handling, because that piece, each and every piece, is a one of a kind, right? It's like a piece of granite. You can only mine out one piece of granite. The other one looks like it, and you could call it by the same thing, but it's a beautiful piece, and you're not going to get that again. So it's a treasure, and that treasure has a value you can't put a price on. I mean, you guys do, and you put a low price, but really the value is significantly higher. And bless your heart.
For sure. All right, everybody, listen, we are live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Sorry for the background noise. We got a lot of people entered where I'm sitting right now. Speaking of YouTube, go there and subscribe. And we got a question from YouTube from no other than Jennifer. I wonder who this is. Never seen this name before. Adam, any advice for new construction builders on how they can incorporate more of the UnBuilders product into their builds? Are you collaborating with or supplying any new construction builders? That's a great question.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we're evolving from just raw material to custom cutting and products, because that's how we're really going to see reclaimed wood get into the supply chain in a bigger way. And again, we're not the only ones doing this. So I know, especially in the US, there's a lot of people that have been doing this for quite a while. And we tip our hats to them because they paved the way. But you've got several different ways you can do it. We're primarily not talking about structural. We're talking about everything else. So the finishes and even getting into furniture and whatnot. But you can use it as flooring. You can use it as cladding. You can use it as siding, soffit, fascia, moldings. And then once you're into custom work, you can build doors and countertops and tabletops, stair treads, just about everything. So anywhere there's wood in a building, it can be reclaimed wood, and it should be. And to sort of loop back to the embodied carbon, There's a great research that came out of Brussels about 10 years ago that they did the embodied carbon study on reclaimed wood. And so we already know wood has got less embodied carbon than, say, concrete and steel. So wood is, it's a greener building product in general. Well, reclaimed wood is actually 12 times less embodied carbon than the material that you get off the shelf today. So reclaimed wood is the greenest building material on the planet. And that's because the carbon has already been counted for in the first building that it came from. And so even though that whole process of deconstructing it, denailing it, getting it ready to go back in, that's costly in terms of finances, but it's 12 times less costly in terms of carbon than cutting a tree, milling it, and getting it into the supply chain.
This is fantastic. No one has ever said that better. And that question, how Jennifer framed it and how you delivered it, the thing that bounced in my head is, these let's say these television designers, they come out with these looks and people go and replicate them, and it's a kind of a blurry, muddy water. A lot of us laugh at it, but at least people are doing things to their buildings. But then imagine, you've all seen the whole barn door look, right? Where people fabricate a door, they get that great hardware, and the door moves this way versus swinging, and everyone's like, right. So it's impressionable. But on the same accord, if you think back to the houses that we did build and how I hope you designed today, is that casework on the base and around the doors, and all your shelving. All of that is the 1-bys and the 2-bys that Adam's talking about. Let's face it, people love getting this whole paint chip stuff. Paint is a cost. Paint is an added material. It's a whatever. I love wood. Not only can you hug a tree, but you can actually go to someone's house that has that trim and that casework and that table and the door, and you can hug their house because that's beautiful. It's non-toxic and it's just the best. New trends are coming in, and UnBuilders are laying it on the line.
UnBuilders laying it on the line. There's another t-shirt right there. Right there. All right. Dr. Rebecca Reynolds says, I love this concept. In the U.S. high schools, there are classes the kids take about building. The unbuilding should also be taught. And have you know, Dr. Reynolds does teach. And I think that's super, super cool. And I think she's right. We need to be teaching a little bit more about how you unbuild it. So when they think about building it, they also think about how it comes apart and what we can do with those materials. So I do love that. Peter Molnar has a comment here. What about planning more structures that can be more easily unbuilt or deconstructed in future cycles? And we talked a little bit about this already, but go for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the most heartwarming comments I've had recently is we do some work with some really great architects here in the Pacific Northwest, and one of the architecture firms we do a ton of work with. We deconstructed the principal's house, and then he's rebuilt most of his house with reclaimed wood. And he said that just working with UnBuilders on the deconstruction of their clients' projects and his own has actually shifted the way that they're now designing buildings within their firm. And so it's, the buzzword is design for disassembly. And that for me, that's so exciting because I am a builder by my background and my heart and soul. And the fact that our deconstruction is now starting to impact architects, builders on how they're thinking about building, that's just so exciting for me.
I think it's perfect. I mean, Peter's question was just right for you because you come from the building side. And let's face it, most of us in the trades come from the building side because we weren't able to come from the unbuilding side, right? Down the street, we might have had a friend that did have a demo company, but that wasn't UnBuilders. So now, because of this step that's happening, there will be generations of people that enter this industry not as builders, but as UnBuilders. That will be how they, cut their cloth. So that part is amazing. And to answer the good doctor and give credit to people on the show, in terms of teachers, Connor Malloy, right, of Ontario, George Brown College, and Matthew Bloomquist of Taylorville High School. Both of those programs are exceptional. Of course, they're friends of the show, but I think people like that can take this and share what Adam does and pass that on to the student levels. For folks in the junior high and grade school, I try to give this forward, because that's how the four of us are where we are today. Because if we didn't have a choice, here's a hammer, here's a 2x, go put those nails in your mouth and get to work.
All right. Hold the horses here. The whole show has just come to a standstill. Mrs. Willie is in the house, so we always have to pay our respects. And she is very curious on how were the basement walls finished in the house that Mark grew up in. So, Mark, this is your mom, so she jumps right to the straight front of the line every time.
All right, Adam, Sean, and Dave, this is story time, right? So the show and tell, get ready to scratch your screen. We had to take down my great-grandfather's barn because a lot of times when you went to sell your land, you had to remove the dwellings on it. So I think I was 5 or 6, and of course, probably stepping on the wrong things and getting in everyone's way. But all the family members came together and it took down the barn, brought it to our house, and that's how we finished the basement walls. So this was the house that I grew up in. It was gray, primarily pine boards. They were a true 1x, and most of them were 14, full 14 wide. So my dad took, remember, we took black felt paper, put it on the studs, and then when you went and put the 1xs on the wall, that way where the knots were missing or the nails were missing, you saw the black through it. And that was our walls growing up. And then all the farm implements went on the walls around it. And then when my folks sold the house, the people first painted that beautiful gray patina, awesome basement that you could throw darts at and it would look better. They painted it white. Excuse me. And then later drywalled. So evilness exists everywhere. So thought you guys would like that story.
No, that's a great story, Mark. I just wanted to touch on something that Adam said earlier, which was the 2x4. And so, Adam's collecting these 2x4s, and so he's going to need to reuse them. And so we look at what's happening now, and I love Adam for one reason, is he really has the end in mind. He's learned about Passive House. He's learned about prefab. Like, he's been to some of the most amazing prefab companies in Europe. And so he knows where we can go to, yet he's collecting this wood. And what's going to be interesting is I can't wait until he gets an MSR machine so he can test and rate all the lumber that he's collecting, so we actually get a stamp, and then he can offer it back into the construction, because of course that might get into some prefab. And just again, when we went from a 2x4 to a 2x6, it wasn't structure. It was about getting more insulation. So we could go back to building with 2x4s, put our sweater on, which again is a Passive principle that Adam knows. So we wrap them in prefab buildings. We wrap them in membranes and insulation, and we ship them. So, everyone out here listening to Adam, pay attention to where he's going, because he knows where he's going. It's a matter of time. But with the team that is committed and working behind him, I've seen his job sites recently. They've hired cranes, and now they literally just cut walls, pick them up, put them on a deck, and bring them back to their shop. And I think part 2, we either get footage, or Adam and we go to this new yard, and so you can see his shop, because I've seen a couple of his Instagram photos. It's exciting, and I can't wait to see it, because there's some really great innovation coming along with his company.
Adam, how do you? You know what? That's awesome, Sean, because you're right. He's picking up the walls, you're taking it back. What's the process like once you get these walls full of sheetrock nails and staples and anything else? Or are you literally taking all of this stuff out by hand back in the shop? And how does the whole process work?
Dave, we actually have a video in the chat bar. I don't know if it still is live for you.
Let me see. Green demo?
No, green demo would be the deconstruction. Well, that's a hand deconstruction. It was the only one I had actually posted online.
All right, let me go through here.
Yeah, I could show a different one if I shared my screen, but
Yep. You want to share your screen? Go ahead and pull it up. It'll be easier for you to pull it up.
okay, let me.
That way I don't lose my wonderful internet that I have, I think, figured out.
Awesome. A great point, Sean. I have talked to Adam, and certifying and all that is a is a conversation for another part, right? Because it's in depth. Go for it, Adam.
You guys, you can see this, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is a residential deconstruction done by crane. So if we did this by hand, I mean, a lot of the houses we still do by hand. This is not our typical, but we wanted to see how quick we could do it. So you can see here, we're dismantling in panels. So it's the opposite of prefab. It's defab. And we're bringing these panels. We took this house down in a day and a half with the crane. We did it by hand. It'd probably be more like 2 to 3 weeks. So we're really trying to minimize our time on site to get our builders back building quicker. And then we just finished her off with an excavator.
Look how clean that was.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. And you heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
UnBuilders have released a new industry term. Dave always says we have too many terms, but when they're the right terms, they're the right terms. So UnBuilders gets all the credit for defab. If anyone tries to touch that and not give credit to Adam, you're wrong, and you got to deal with all of us.
I'll add that to
and Jennifer. So, yeah.
All right, let's get through some more comments here. We're at top of the hour. We got a little bit of a late start due to some glitches trying to get online, but we are here. So let me just fly through. We definitely always got to give out a shout out. Tim Sims says franchisable, like Brian from 1-800-GOT-JUNK did. He's saying you should franchise this. Have you thought about franchising?
Yeah, definitely. That's that's really why we went on Dragon's Den, and the last year has been focusing on just getting our systems tightened and really getting this to be a well-oiled machine. Next year is where we're going to start to really look at that expansion. So we're in 2 markets right now, Vancouver and Victoria. That's our focus. Get those crews taking a bigger market share, really starting to build the brand and tighten the ship here before we look to other markets.
I got another question, follow-up question. Can I follow-up question here?
Yeah.
How are you getting labor? Are you able to get the labor to get these jobs done? Are you finding it hard to get the labor?
It's very hard to get the labor. We've got some amazing crews and some really committed people, but that is very difficult for sure. It's it's one thing to try to get a carpenter or an electrician that's a skilled trade that there's a ticket, you're going to make good money. Trying to get someone to demolish or deconstruct, very different story. But we do have some great people working all the way through the company. So, but that's always a struggle. We're always hiring, always trying to find more people. I think because we're so mission focused, we might have a slight edge on other companies where we have people coming in willing to shift careers, take pay drops, knowing that they're coming in as a laborer, even though they might have a skilled trade background or some more experience, but they believe in the mission and they see where we're going. Right. But always a challenge.
That's awesome.
Hey, Dave, I have a question for you. You've shown over the past year and a half so many offsite facilities and so many site sets, right, of the panelized and the prefab and the modulars going in. This is the first time where you saw the defab coming off and onto the truck, like boom, boom, boom. What do you think, brother?
Listen, I think from the modular and manufactured side of this, if some thought went into the construction of these structures moving forward, the deconstruction side of it, the UnBuild side of this, could really make sense when it comes to the energy efficiency and moving forward. I think if you're actually able to go in there and take these buildings apart 20 years from now, 100 years from now, whatever the life cycle somebody wants a building to be, I think it really makes sense. And going back to the labor side, like you said, that mission, right? Imagine these offsite manufacturers, if they had that mission and culture that we're building something that could be unbuilt as well, right? I think that's what I'm hearing. It gives you a leg up on hiring for sure.
Yeah.
Something else, Adam, that you might want to add to your tool belt, there is a lot. I was just at another show this weekend, and they're using incarcerated And they're going to the prisons and looking for the work release programs, right? And they've become, from what I heard over a couple of these manufacturers speaking yesterday and the day before, they're really solid workers, right? Because if they're not working, they're going back to jail, but they can come out, learn a skill, and hopefully have a job once their time is served. So, this is something that I've been hearing more and more of, and I think it's another pool of people that need a second chance. I mean, not everybody's a bad person just because they ended up in the slammer. We all make mistakes.
Well, there's an interesting segue there that you guys might not know, but Sean knows. Is I'm gonna give someone credit again. Is Matt Bloomquist, right? Besides being the high school teacher, he ran the trades program at the local prison, and they panelized for Habitat for Humanity. So, again, all these examples, it's a small world after all. Yeah. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at.
For sure. All right, we got a couple more comments and questions in here, so I want to run through these so we make sure we hit everybody. Tim Sims corrected himself. He spelled franchisable properly.
Yes, he did. Nice work.
Which is always appropriate when we're speaking amongst ourselves. My brother Brian says, great market recycled lumber. From what I've seen, board foot pricing varies across the country. Depending on the species of wood, the profit can be substantial. Yep, he's spot on there, especially in Western PA. I don't remember the name of the wood, but there's a lot of wood that doesn't even exist anymore. Trees have gone extinct, and they're found in a lot of these old barns. All right. Rob Howard. Happy Friday. There you go. Many Habitat for Humanity affiliates have deconstruction crews that salvages buildings, materials for their restores, for sure. Steven, go ahead, Mark, read that one.
I'll read that one, but I just want to comment to Adam. Besides Dave and Sean and I throwing our hat in for when you're ready for the franchise, Rob Howard is a great guy for you to talk to. He's really something else. He's down in Carolina doing developments, and he picks the location to be close to breweries because he's a smart cookie. Okay, what's the comment, Dave?
And can I make a response to his comment about Habitat for Humanity? So because we work quite closely with the Habitat here locally, and they dabbled in deconstruction, and then it was a bit too much for volunteers and whatnot. And if we look at any industry, if it's deconstruction has had a really high reliance on charities, and we rely on charities for the tax receipt and whatnot. But that's where I'm really trying to push for other incentives, because if you're an industry that relies on charity and volunteer work, it almost delegitimizes the industry. And so we are really trying to show deconstruction is great for private business, for-profit business as well. Right. I love that we're tied in with charity. I love that Habitat does what they do. But it's not going to be a Habitat for Humanity crew that's going to blow people away and deconstruct a house in 5 days, which is what we have done. So yeah, it's the more kind of blend of for-profit charity that we can see in deconstruction, I think the better, as we transition to more of the for-profit side to really legitimize this. This is not just a feel-good story here. I like to compare it to when drywall was invented, and that's where we're right at that pinnacle from demolition to deconstruction. When drywall was invented, you had some plasterers saying, no one's going to use that crap. We got jobs for the next 30 years. Well, guess what? 3 years later, they were out of work.
Right.
But the demolition contractors, at least the ones here, they know that this is coming, and they're going to be ready. But until someone pushes them, they're going to keep doing what they do. And so that the writing's on the wall from Vancouver to Portland to San Mateo County to San Antonio to Pittsburgh. These places are all pushing policy, and if you don't think deconstruction is going to be the industry standard in 10 years, I think you're dead wrong.
Adam, I can't wait. And Dave and Sean are going to go nuts when I say this. I can't wait for the day when the crane is set and your trucks are pulling the pieces off and getting them on, and then that truck pulls away as the next truck pulls up and delivers the modular passive house, and then all the casing in that ends up being from the house that you just deconstructed. Boom, local beast mode. Let's go.
Yeah.
There you go,
Again,
Mark.
I just want to give a call out to all
Sean,
the builders that are, that are watching today is in your next project, why not give Adam a call? Why not look at this whole UnBuilders process? Try it once. I know in Vancouver, we're seeing a lot of builders calling him, and it's great because he shows up. The sites are super clean. They're way cleaner compared to demolishing the houses. So then when your framers show up, your next crew, they're not dealing with messes. So I'm, call it to everyone. Give Adam a call, try this process. You'll be surprised of how great it is and just the heartwarming, and to be able to touch and feel that wood. You're gonna be like, this is the stuff we're connected to. So I'm glad you
Sean,
have those examples of woods.
I got a message on Instagram from Chris at Living Legends, Live Free Construction, right? And he says he wants to get a project going with Adam, and coincidentally, Chris is going to be on the show November 26th.
So imagine that, Mark and Sean. We do this show all the time. Sean, you do your show all the time. Sean's the new guru of showmanship at 475 and long before. And what you just said, Mark, is so big because this show, Sean's show, there's a lot of business that happens because people discover people. People discover people from watching our shows, and there's nothing that tickles my heart or tickles my fancy or whatever you want to call it when I'm out and about and somebody says, oh yeah, we just did, $5 million with so-and-so on this build. And I'm like, all right, we found them from your show. That's what's super cool about this show. And I think what you just said, Mark, this is why people need to comment when they're watching. This is why you need to let people know you're there. You will be very surprised who we say, oh, you should know so-and-so, right? And that's what this is all about. All right, we got a few more things to get through, Mark. I think that's awesome that you said that. That was, that tickled my heart. All right, here we go. I'm done being tickled. With likely a new building going into the same spot, how much could you just reuse on site, saving transport and storage on your end? Oh man, reclaim, reuse. Imagine if you could take it apart and put it right back together on site.
So I don't know your thoughts on that, Adam, but what I commonly think is in order to do that in that time window, you probably want an oversized lot where you can share that space to do it, or bring that offsite and then prepare it for other uses. It's an interesting thing. It's not that you're not capable of it, but municipalities and calendars are often control aspects of our industry that we should really put on the shelf.
Yeah.
Because that is the problem. It's not the workforce. It's not the ideas. It's calendars and goofy municipal laws that need to be off the books.
And we have done that, and we do it quite regularly on a small scale. So someone will say, okay, deconstruct our house, and this just happened last week. We want 30 of the floor joists, so we'll denail them on site, package them, lumber wrap them, leave them in a stack, and we're gone. And they've got a blank lot, and they've got a stack of the wood that they asked us to do. But definitely large scale, and for timelines and everything, it's got to get off site. So we're just trying to make sure that the lumber doesn't go too far. And the real job, my renovation that was the pinnacle of me going right at UnBuilding was just that we deconstructed this renovation 1910 house, put all of the wood that we deconstructed in the garage for like 9 months, and then when we were ready for the finishes, we just brought like a planer and our tools to site, and we did all of the finishes with that wood. It never left site, and that was, for me, that really showed me what can be done. And I think in general, something that Sean and I have in common, which is sort of where he transitioned into 475 and I transitioned into UnBuilders, is realizing that site construction, even passive house on site construction, just how inefficient it was and how much waste it generated. For both of us, we said, there's better ways. And that's where the rise of prefabrication right now and mass timber is just so exciting, and deconstruction and reclaimed wood has a massive part to play in that.
Yeah.
I
And so,
have an
Mark,
oddball one, Adam, because you mentioned the drywall there, and then the deconstruction. With all those houses, like there's a significant amount of plaster lath. Like for our in Chicago, my perspective, balloon framed, two flat. Um, we had a client who wanted to do the demolition, in his words, because this goes going back years ago, himself, and there was a 20-foot dumpster in the garage, and by himself he stacked the lath in the dumpster, each one, not placed it, stacked it. And then that moved to the wood shop, and two staircases were built out of that laminated lath. So you talked about 2x4s. I'm giving you the lath thing. Is what happens to the lath in your world?
It's all of our spacing in our lumber lifts. So
there it
yeah,
is,
we
Mark.
yeah
There
we
it is.
separate out, like we use it all because it's
Adam, explain that for somebody who doesn't understand what you just said. You know, everybody understands what the old plaster and lath is in an old home, especially if you tried to hang a picture in an old house. You figure it out real quick as it crumbles and makes a bigger hole, and then there's wire behind it when you try and put something through it to hang what you want to hang. Explain what you just said on what you're doing with that, and then we're going to fly through a couple other comments and we're going to wrap it up. But I think this is a great point that everybody can understand.
So when you're packaging lumber, you want to have spacing in between the studs so that if they're outside in the elements, if it gets wet, there's aeration, it can dry, it's not going to rot and mold. So you lay down 6 2x4s, and then you put a couple pieces of lath, and then your next layer, and then lath, and your next layer. So we use all the lath for spacing in our lumber lifts. We have so much of the other wood that to use it as into production,
right,
would be it's so far down the line for everything else we have, but we do utilize it.
Yeah, so a common term is like a sticker or something, right? To have that, and it helps to level it out. So another oddball question before we get into the other ones is, with all the denailing that happens, how many 55-gallon drums of nails do you have laying around?
A lot. We have a lot of we recycle it, so we bring them in. Other than the obviously the square nails that were like hand forged, we put those in a separate bucket that'll be in our showroom for sale. But all the rest we just bring to the metal recyclers. But yeah, it's crazy how much comes out. And if you're looking at automation, which has to happen all around, the deconstruction itself is extremely hard to automate. The on-site service. So we're utilizing cranes. We're using the excavator to help us pull the building apart, but most of that work has to be done by hand until we can come up with like a robot suit that someone can be in ripping a building apart. It's a laborious job, but down the line, that's where we're looking at some R&D. I know of another company that I spoke to a few months ago from San Francisco looking at automating denailing with robotics. That's where it's going to get really exciting because that's a very hard position to fill. You're going to denail 40 hours a week for the next 5 years. That's not very exciting. So
I think, Adam, we need to challenge our network. Hilti has the robot suit for your arms and shoulders. So it's an anti-fatigue suit.
Exoskeletal.
Someone in our network. That's the
biggest word I know, right there.
Yep.
Exoskeletal.
Someone in our network. You're going to get that contact at Hilti, and you're going to get that suit. And Adam and Sean and Dave are going to wear that suit, and we're going to have a 24-hour denailing marathon. And Hilti, we thank you for that, and everyone else that's making it after you.
Yeah,
I love it.
So, Adam, we got these. Got to be 2 quick questions, and then we're wrapping the show up here. We're at an hour and 20 minutes. So, 2 questions. One, how many blades do you go through when you're deconstructing a home?
A lot. I mean, we're primarily using like Sawzalls. We go through, a good stack of a dozen wrecker blades, and then the other cutting happens in our yard. So we go through a lot of chop saw blades, but we try not to hit the nails where we can, but no matter what, there's a lot of metal in there. Yeah.
And the last question, and I know this is the oddball, how much is a bag of groceries question, but people want to know, let's just think, let's look at a 2,000 square foot home, or I don't, Sean, you do the Canadian math on what that translates to. 2-story, whatever. What does it cost to unbuild a house for you?
It depends.
Right. So
it's in there. I got to ask. Peter always is, or Shannon's always commenting. So that you got to give Shannon something to bite on so he can come back.
So the cost depends on the region because there's waste policy. So if I'm talking about Vancouver, I first have to say the demolition cost because it's different than even Victoria where we operate. So Vancouver, you can't just demolish a house fully intact. So right away, the demolition cost is higher than many other regions in the country, which is why we're here. So in Vancouver, your demolition cost on that 2,000 square foot house is probably in the $25,000 range because you have to separate drywall by hand. Typically, you're separating stucco by hand as well off the exterior. So that demo cost is much higher than other regions. So you're $25,000 to $30,000 for demo. Our deconstruction will be sort of in the $40,000 to $50,000 range, but you're getting the tax receipt for everything we salvage. And that tax receipt, our average tax receipt we see is anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000. And you get about 50% of that as an actual dollar for dollar tax savings. So call it $50,000 tax credit, $25,000 you're saving on your taxes over the next either 1 to 5 years, which drives our price competitive to demolition, or sometimes a lot of the time actually cheaper in the overall cost scheme. So upfront more expensive, but the overall is competitive. And that's really where the donation model works really well. And that's why we rely on it unless or until the government adds other subsidies, which, for all of us in the industry would love to see.
Well, for policy, Adam, if there was a fee for demolition, right, to persuade people not to throw it away, and then that stayed in a box, and then that box was used for proper deconstruction. Now, you guys don't have to figure out how to do everything. Bing, bam, boom, right to the moon. Like, forget about it.
I'll go even simpler.
Great.
If you're going to deconstruct or you're going to demolish, if you choose deconstruction, you get your permits 4 months earlier. And if you do that, the savings you're getting on your holdings cost makes up the difference, and you can deconstruct all day.
That's the proper greenwashing.
Yeah, both in commercial and residential, because a commercial job we might be $100,000 more, but the holding cost per month on that property is $100,000. So all of our clients, from sort of the debriefs we've done, say if you can get 4-month early permits, knowing that we're going to save about 2 months, this is a no-brainer. We're deconstructing everything.
Jennifer, that's a new T-shirt. 4-month early permits or bust. Dave, you're on mute.
Well, I know they're trying to wrap up, so I just wanted to say there, Dave and Mark, is anybody that's out there, when you see an UnBuilders team working somewhere, give them a high five, but I strongly encourage you, do not get into an arm wrestling match. These are people that are pulling nails. They'll probably break your arm. Give them a high five. Don't do one of these. You will lose. Great stuff, Adam.
Yeah, Adam, this was a great conversation. Dr. Reynolds, thank you for tuning in. You're not going to miss anything because that is a wrap for today's show. And Adam, I have a feeling we are having you back on. I know we got to redo probably the intro. I think a lot of people may have missed some of that intro, but you're a rock star, dude, and what you're doing. I'm really happy that you decided to come on BS Friday with Mark, myself, and Adam. If you are not following Adam Corneil on UnBuilders, you're wrong. You need to be following. Same with Sean Santamore, Mark Bare Naked Willie. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, you better go there and subscribe. And to all of you that are new today, that are joining us and have said hello, we really appreciate you. We appreciate your support, not only here, but on Passive House Accelerator and all the other shows. It really means a lot to all of us. So Buzz Holowitzer says, ciao for now. That's it, everybody. We'll see you next week. Don't go anywhere, Adam. We'll come right back to you after the outro. Sean, Mark, don't go anywhere. All right, everybody.
Thanks,
we'll see you next time. Bye now.